International students, if you are entering Canada for the first time, then I'm sure you must have a question in mind that what kind of documents will be required at the airport, what kind of questions can the airport officer ask you, what kind of things that you should be doing at the airport, and what can you expect at the airport when you're landing in Canada for the first time as an international student. So if you are having all of these doubts and all of these questions in your mind, then this video will be very helpful because we'll cover all of these topics. So please be sure to watch the video till the end. My name is Sahil. Guys, welcome back once again. My name is Sahil and I'm a regulated Canadian immigration consultant. I practice in Ontario. My office is there. If you have to get in touch with me, my number is on the screen and the details are there in the description box. More than happy to speak with you. Before we proceed any further, please make sure that you hit the subscribe button and the bell icon because we talk a lot about Canadian immigration. And if you are an aspirant of moving to Canada, then this is the channel that you must be subscribed to all the time. So guys, this particular video is dedicated to all the international students who have recently been approved for a study permit for Canada and are supposed to travel to Canada in the near future. Now, Canada normally has two bigger intakes or the larger intakes and then two smaller intakes. The larger intakes are usually the January intake and the September intake, which is the winter and the fall. And then the two other random intakes include an intake in May and one in July. People in a September intake would normally be traveling somewhere in July or August or maybe first week of September, and so people who are traveling in January or starting courses in January would be traveling somewhere in the month of December or early January, right? So after you've booked your tickets and after you're all planned up to travel to Canada, the first question that normally comes to anybody's mind is that how is the experience going to be when you reach the airport for the first time. Now, reaching the airport for the first time, there are 2 or 3 things that you need to keep in mind. One is where to proceed. Second, what do you need to do at the counter or the immigration desk. Third, what kind of documents are required. And fourth, are there any other additional important steps that you must follow when you are at that moment in front of the immigration officer. Now first, whenever you reach an international airport in Canada, the normal routine, for example, at the largest airports like the Pearson Airport in Toronto or maybe the Vancouver Airport, would be that you would find a particular signage on the airport that will say that international students should proceed in a specific direction or proceed towards a specific counter. Of late, what we are seeing is that immigration officers or CBSA officers would reach the airport or the line or the queue that is exiting the aircraft, and they would give special directions to international students that they can proceed towards a dedicated queue that will be very long. So for international students, one key note here is that expect to spend a lot of time at the airport for the first time, because at that time a lot of things will be there and a lot of other students will be there with you in the aircraft and at the airport at the same time. And at that moment you will be pushed towards a separate queue and everybody will be given a random entry document, for example the custom clearance form and everything else, but you will then proceed towards a specific immigration desk where you will see an immigration officer waiting for you. So that's the signage, and you should always look for special signs at the airport or ask a particular immigration officer or CBSA officer at the airport. Tell them that you're an international student, you're landing for the first time. After you reach the immigration desk or you meet the visa officer, there are certain documents that you must carry in your hand luggage that you are carrying on the aircraft with you. So the carry-on baggage in the aircraft, you should have certain physical proper printed documents or the original documents with you. Do not include these documents in the check-in luggage or in the storage compartment. I will tell you what documents are required. So normally you would require a passport, which would be, or a travel document which you would be using to get onto the aircraft from your country, from your home country. Second would obviously be the visa in it. So visa sticker in the passport or an ETA if you're coming from an ETA specific country. So make sure that that visa is valid and it is there in the passport, or if you have a printed copy, so be it, you can have that. So those are the 2 minimum requirements. Third, whenever your visa study permit gets approved, you always get two things. One is that visa letter, that visa in the passport. The second is a letter of introduction. That port of entry letter of introduction, that particular letter will tell you that what is the kind of study permit or the permit that has been approved for you, will have your personal details on it. Now, the important part is that this letter of introduction will hit your GC keys after the visa has been stamped. So all of this happens at the time of the first stage. So say for example, you submitted back in the day, you submitted a study permit, you got an approval, you got a passport request, you sent your passport to VFS or the direct VAC, the visa application center of Canada. Then the passport got returned to you. There was a study a visa in it. At that time, usually on that day or that time, your GC key, your online GC key will also get that letter of introduction, port of entry letter of introduction. You need to get a printout of that. So get that printout and the passport and the visa. These three things are bare essentials that you would require at the immigration desk. Beyond this, there are a couple of other documents also for which the officer will demand. The other fourth document that would be required would be a designated learning institution issued letter of acceptance. I'm sure you would have uploaded this LOA when you were applying for study permit. So you just need a proper printed copy in your hand. Next is the proof of fees payment. So all the fee receipts, anything, all proofs of UTR copies, or maybe say, if you have any bank statement or anything that is reflecting that fee transfer, have that handy. And also the official receipt that has been issued by the college, you should have it handy, have it proper printed in your hand luggage with you. Beyond that, you should have the proof of funds with you. Say for example, you're carrying $5,000 in cash, maybe forex, cards, or maybe say a traveler's check, or if you have a readily available your bank statement for any net banking transfer, or a GIC record as well. So make sure that you have all of those records printed and ready to give to the officer if the officer requires on the spot. Then beyond that, if you had submitted an upfront medical test, make sure that you have it ready for the officer to view. The printed copy of the medical record is important. Now, all those medical records normally say that the documents have not been sent to IRCC and all. You can ignore that because that is on the day of your test. Afterwards, obviously, the panel physician will send those details to the IRCC, and obviously they looked at that and then only issued the study permit to you. So don't worry about what is the content of that letter. It is normally in an e-medical proof of upfront medical. There's a barcode usually and your photograph. It tells you what kind of a test was done, but that's about it. Those 2 pages, 1 page or 2 pages is more than sufficient. You don't need a test result or a test copy, or you don't need to talk to any panel physician or anybody for that. Just the confirmation that you appeared for the test is sufficient. Guys, another important document to look for is if you have already taken a police clearance certificate from your countries that you have lived in the past, make sure that you carry that. It is not mandatory, because it is normally mandatory for people who have a criminal background or anything. It is there in the advisory issued by CBSA, but it is not a mandatory document. If you have it, great. If you don't have it, then IRCC will tell you that that particular document is required, and you can carry it in the luggage. Also, the upfront medical is important if you are going to be studying in a particular field. Say for example, you will be working in the medical health services, or maybe exposure to children or teaching, then IRCC will make it mandatory for you. So make sure that you have the upfront medical there on the flight with you. Otherwise, if you did not upload previously, then most it will not be required. So it says if required, and in the police clearance or the medical or the criminal record check as well, or the conviction record, that is also optional if applicable on you. Now, these are the bare minimum documents that you should have with you. But on a personal front, I like my students who are entering Canada for the first time to carry all the other documents that you uploaded at the time of your study permit application. Now, those documents could include all your proof of funds. For example, your CA certificate, could be your bank statement, could be the latest bank statement when you're traveling. Now, second could be your proof of accommodation for the first few days. For example, you booked an Airbnb, or a friend is coming to pick you up, or there is a hotel or another accommodation that you booked. Have that. If there is a hostel that is accommodating you, have the confirmation of that hostel with you. Then beyond that would be your basic printout of your education, your English or French language exam results, have them printed ready for the officer to view if they need it. Then for the work experience documents, I always like my students to carry at least their experience certificates and maybe one pay slip, just in case if the officer has to view anything. Not mandatory, like I said, optional documents, but do have them. So in a nutshell, anything and everything that you uploaded at the time of visa application, it is always a good practice to have it in a separate file. If needed, you can present it to the officer. But apart from that, the bare minimum essential documents I told you that you need to carry. Just a quick recap: passport, visa, letter of introduction, then letter of acceptance, proof of fees payment to the college, proof of funds, upfront medical. These are the basic documents that you would be requiring at the airport. And then on top of all of this is a CBSA issued advisory. Now CBSA was kind enough, CBSA is like the border security force of Canada, so CBSA was kind enough to issue a video and a written text on the IRCC website guiding all the international students. Now the video clearly tells you what kind of experience will you have at the airport. It also talks about what kind of documents will be required, and there is a link, there is a tweet also, there is a link that talks about all how the experience will be at the airport, what kind of questions can be asked, and what kind of documents will be required. Now guys, this is so far the documentation. Now let's talk about what are the things you need to do at the airport and what kind of questions. First will be the question. The officer can obviously ask you what is your background, what is your English score. They would obviously want to look at your English or hear you talk in English if you have submitted an English exam result. So obviously you should be proficiently talking in English with them, and they can talk to you about your course, your interest. They can be talking to you about where are you going to stay, hostel accommodations, just to know that you're pretty much well aware and prepared about where you're going to study, what you're going to study, and how will you be spending the first few days. These are the basic set of questions that the officer can ask and cannot ask, totally at the wish of the officer, depending upon how your initial discussion with the officer at the airport goes. So please be prepared with what you're going to study and where are you going to stay and what is the college all about. Now guys, lastly, after you are done with that discussion with the immigration officer, after you're done showing the documentation to the airport officer, the officer will hand over a study permit to you. That study permit will have all your details. For example, your name, date of birth, which college or designated learning institution you're going towards, or maybe what are your working instructions, can you work part-time, can you not work part-time, and your job on the spot is to check if you've been allowed to work, if you're not allowed to work, or if there are any other changes. Guys, that's your moment that you can talk to the officer on the spot, get anything and everything corrected. Do not rush out as soon as you get the permit. I've seen students, they rush. No, don't do that. Take your moment, pause, look at all the spellings and look at all the conditions. They are the most important part. The conditions must be thoroughly checked. If there is any issue with part-time work or not working in any other industry or location, have a question discussed with the officer on the spot. The officer will fix any errors, and it is very common to have errors. Let me tell you, it's not like anything that the issue is 100% correct. Errors with those study permits are very, very common. Okay, so it's important that you take your time and you discuss it with the officer on the spot. At the time of exit, you can go towards customs if you have to declare anything like money, dollars above 10,000 or whatever. And sometimes on the spot there is a Service Canada desk that is open. The next step would normally be that after you have received the study permit, go to the Service Canada counter and get your SIN number. So that's the social insurance number. You would need that social insurance number if you have to work part-time in the next couple of years while you're a student. So instead of going outside after the airport looking for Service Canada, trying to travel, if the Service Canada on the airport is open, then better to get it on the spot. If it's not open, don't worry about it. You can go after a couple of days or the next day to a Service Canada office afterwards. You can also apply for a SIN number online or by mail, but it's always recommended go in person, get an appointment, and get it on the spot. Guys, this is the overall experience that is going to be with regards to your landing in Canada for the first time as an international student. I hope the video did help you in greater detail how your experience is going to be, what kind of documents will be required, and what can you expect at the airport to be discussed with you or required from you. Guys, if you have any questions, if you have anything to discuss, please feel free to schedule a consultation with us. We will be more than happy to speak with you or give you any advice that you seek. Guys, we wish you all the best, and we hope you get your study permits and you get to come to Canada very, very soon. All the best, and see you soon.